of, you know,
Good afternoon. You're watching LNA Now with Barry and Jenny. And today I'm flying solo, but I assure you we are not alone because we have one of the best educators known to this industry. We've got Brady Kelly from Rococo Botanicals joining us today. Good afternoon, Brady. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jenny. I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited to be able to share the science of skin with everyone and how we can work better to beat the heat and the humidity this awful summer.
And Brady and I were just catching up. We were both just in Las Vegas at the IECSC a week ago. I've lost track of time. I feel like I'm in another dimension. And that's one place that the heat was insane. Brady, you're in Dallas though, so you deal with a different kind of heat.
Yeah, it's something that's really hot all along the Gulf Coast. It's hot and it's humid. And I didn't realize until about a year ago too, how much humidity affects the skin. Like there's a lot of positive effects on it, but too much humidity can actually be really terrible for the skin. And I had no idea.
But what did you feel like in Vegas? Because I grew up in Denver where there's zero humidity, and I guess I was just so used to it. But even when I went from Denver to Vegas, I was like, this is a whole other dimension having zero moisture in the air. That will just strip you. And I have never wanted so badly to get back into humidity on the East Coast.
Yeah, it felt like being in a convection oven, walking around, it's hot, it's dry, it's windy, like your whole face gets itchy, you're just like painful.
Oh my God, your eyes, your everything. So it was a whole nother world there in Vegas, but happy to have our skin back in shape, back the way it should be. And for anyone who lives in Vegas full time, you guys know what you're doing there. You know what your skin needs. So you acclimate to that. But we today, you guys, I'm so excited we're talking about humidity. That just naturally worked into this conversation, Brady. We're talking about Rococo Botanicals. And if you guys are new to the skincare industry or new to this brand, prepare to have your mind blown because just at the booth in Vegas, Jacine, every time I see her, she loads some kind of scientific fact and study and research and before and after on me. And I'm like, Jacine, one thing at a time, because she's wicked smart. Her chemistry background just blows my mind. And so every single time I interact with her, I walk away with my mind blown. I look at the before and after pictures from her products and what she's always testing because she's always coming out with something new. And I'm continually just my mind is blown. So seeing her in Vegas, I know you guys have a few new things up your sleeve, which maybe you'll talk about today.
Yeah, we do have a few exciting things coming out, something we just launched in Vegas, and then a few products I'm really excited to showcase, including our overnight recovery mask. Back in March, I think the whole world fell in love with it a little more because we became the only company to ever win an Ally Award from Cosmetic and Toiletries magazine back to back with the overnight recovery mask.
I believe it. You guys, that's one of the products I used while I was in Denver trying to acclimate before I got to Vegas. And I literally woke up and it was like I had gone back to the East Coast. So you guys, your formulations are just top notch. But Brady, tell everyone your position with Rococo and how you got involved with Jacine.
So I am the Director of Education and Training for Rococo Botanicals. I've known Jacine for about 6 or 7 years now, actually. My background is in biology. That's what I studied in college. And then I ended up going to aesthetics school after. And I met Jacine through a company she runs called Educated Therapists. And if y'all have never met Jacine, taken a class with her, spoken to her, everything Jenny said is absolutely true. She's like one of the most brilliant minds in cosmetic chemistry you will ever meet. And so everything she would post, every class she would teach, every lecture, I would just be watching it, I'd following it. And we just kind of became friends through that. I used to run my own spa just south of Dallas here in Texas. And I was like, well, I guess I need to try some Rococo Botanicals. And ever since I first tried it, maybe 3, 4 years ago, I was hooked. And she ended up saying, hey, you know what? Do you want to just come work for me? And I said, you know what? Yeah, that sounds like a dream come true. And now every day I'm like reading research papers, sending cool things I see to her, helping estheticians like here in the US, but also in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand. So it's really wonderful to be able to feel like I'm helping people all around the globe.
Oh, and because her products go well beyond just the aesthetic treatment room, right? I mean, she comes up with products, and you guys, we have an article I'll link to in the chat for you guys, where she goes into the background of how she started Rococo to help her daughter. I love getting to know the founders behind the brands that we work with, because it just helps you resonate a little bit more, and it builds that trust and that credibility. And so that's really what we love. So we have a whole article on telling Jacine's story. So I'll link to that as soon as Brady gets started. But it's so the brand, she's based in Australia. Is that where the brand originates?
Yes. Everything is in Australia. We actually have our office, our lab, and our warehouse for Australia all in the same building down on the Gold Coast in Queensland. And then we do have a US-based warehouse that we ship stuff to so that people don't have to wait forever. But we actually formulate and manufacture everything ourselves there in our own headquarters.
Oh my God, I love that. And so it's Australia, you mentioned Canada, you mentioned obviously the US, and then where else did you mention?
And we're also in New Zealand.
New Zealand. Okay. Oh my God. I love it. So, Brady, I'm going to let you get started because I know you've got a jam-packed slideshow. So you will share your screen. I'm going to go off camera. So I'll like go undercover. But if you guys have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'll be more than happy to sort of pop in, Brady, if there's a question that's really pertinent to something that you're talking about. But you guys can use the chat to ask questions. It's a little easier in the Q&A so we can monitor them. But get involved. Feel free to pick Brady's brain while you have him live. And I will let you get started, sir.
Absolutely. So let's see here. So today we're going to be going over humidity and the skin. We know that as the summer has start to hit here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is now summer, and humidity tends to increase in the summer. So humidity can have both positive and negative effects on the skin. We know that when we are in an environment with absolutely no humidity, it really does make you feel dry. It makes you feel itchy. So once we increase that humidity, of course, our skin is going to feel softer. It's going to feel more hydrated because it is. And even though it does provide some benefits like increased hydration, we can start to see various issues with high humidity in the skin. So high humidity can actually cause you to break out more. That really damp environment actually causes an increase in oil production. So that can increase the amount of like clogged pores we have there. And that leads to a higher likelihood of breakouts, especially for anyone that's already oily or acneic. And it can also increase fungal infections in the skin. So things like Malassezia yeast creating fungal acne in the skin, things like seborrheic dermatitis, because fungi do thrive in that warm and humid conditions. So anything with high humidity is going to be a favorable environment for their growth. So then think about things like athlete's foot, things like ringworm, things like yeast infections. You get that from a lot of the time your clothing being too tight. That increases like the humidity there in the skin between the clothing and the skin itself. Things like we said, athlete's foot, things like seborrheic dermatitis, you're going to see on the face, you're going to see on the underarms, in the thighs, even on the forehead. And then heat rash. Me and Jenny were talking about how hot it was there in Vegas. You know, we know anytime we get too hot, I'm sure everyone has experienced this at one point or another, that excessive sweating caused by the high humidity and the high heat leads to that really like hot, itchy sensation. You get a red histamine reaction all over the skin. You'll get small red bumps and blisters. It can also exacerbate things like eczema in the skin. You know, if you have eczema or psoriasis, that high humidity a lot of the time is going to exacerbate that because that high humidity actually leads to an impairment of the skin barrier. In addition to excess fungi, we can actually see bacterial infections increase with high humidity because it creates an ideal breeding ground for a lot of bacteria because they tend to accumulate in places that moisture and warmth accumulate. And then overall, people are just going to notice an increase in sensitivity with high humidity. That's like I said, because the excess moisture can disrupt the skin barrier as well as disrupt the skin's natural pH balance, which is going to lead to irritation, redness, increased sensitivity to external irritants, and an increase in things like mites on the skin. So, despite what you may think, the increased humidity in the air can actually contribute to dehydration of the skin. Like we've been saying, this occurs because the skin's barrier function can be compromised, leading to an increase in transepidermal water loss and dryness. So, What we want to look at when we're thinking about, okay, how humid is it or how dry is it, is something called the relative humidity. And that's defined as the amount of water vapor present in the air, and it's going to be expressed as the percentage of amount needed for saturation at the same temperature. Essentially, this is how much humidity is in the air and how humid does it feel. So relative humidity is going to play a critical role in maintaining that healthy indoor environment by regulating moisture levels and preventing the growth of harmful microorganisms. So there is a healthy amount of humidity. What we want to look for is about 40 to 60% relative humidity. Anything lower than 40 and higher than 60 can have some real big impacts on the health of the skin and the overall health. So if we were back somewhere like in Vegas or in Denver, when the relative humidity is too low, it can cause dryness of the respiratory tract and the skin. And then irritation there too. And that dryness and that irritation is going to make your skin more susceptible to infection. But then on the other hand, when relative humidity is too high, that damp environment can encourage the growth of harmful microorganisms like mold, like bacteria, like viruses, and even mites, like the Dermadex mite. So you can see an increase in things like rosacea with a high relative humidity. Staphylococcus aureus, Pseudomonas, anything down here, they will always contaminate something that is going to have a high humidity. So anytime it's below 0% and anything above 60%, you're going to start to see that irritation in your client's skin. You can see here, I have just a little slide here. This right here is considered the optimal zone. That's that 40 to 60% that we were talking about. So you can see in low humidity, bacteria thrive, and in higher humidities, they thrive. Same with viruses, any fungi like mold, mites. You'll start to see more things like respiratory infections, rhinitis, and asthma in both low and high. Chemical interactions. This is going to be things like, the varnish, even in your wood furniture, maybe if there is like a fire retardant on the linens that you use in your bed, there in your treatment room, things can actually start to ooze out of your furniture at a too high of a humidity. And then production of ozone is going to be higher in lower humidity. So what can we really do? Well, that depends on what we know is going to be affecting the skin. We know we can't control what the weather is like. So if we know how the humidity is affecting the skin, we know what we can do to support the skin. So high humidity can lead to a disruption of your epithelial junctions, which is basically how your skin is held together. When we have a disruption in that, we have an increased permeability to things like pollutants, allergens, and viruses. This is especially important when we're thinking about treating the skin because things like pollutants will actually lodge in the skin and create inflammation over time, aging the skin. That high humidity can also lead to damage in your epithelial cells. So many of them are going to release mediators such as alarmins, which can promote inflammatory T2 cascade. Those T2 cytokines are going to be things like interleukin-4 and interleukin-13, downregulate the expression of tight junction barrier proteins, which is going to contribute to that reduced epithelial junction integrity and increase the permeability in a vicious cycle. So what that means is it's a vicious feedback loop. The more that your skin is being damaged by this high humidity, the more that it is going to then be irritants then are causing inflammation in the skin, the more the humidity is able to damage it. Then when we think about things like alterations in relative humidity, that's going to be related to worsening eczema due to reduced conductance in the skin, a damage in the lipid barrier, and an activation of those mast cells and reduced elasticity. When we have epithelial damage, like we said, an excess of increased humidity indoors is going to increase the allergen load of several allergens like molds and mites, which can facilitate the penetration of other allergens like staphylococcus antigens. So when we have that those damaged epithelial cells, we're going to time in things like rosacea because of the excess Dermadex mites growing on the skin. We're going to see that increased load of allergens can increase just itching in the skin, and it can also lead to things like, excess blowing of the nose, rubbing the skin raw. The skin is already damaged, so you'll see things like perioral and perinasal dermatitis. And then, of course, when we see an increase in staphylococcus on the skin, that can lead to things like excess staph infections in the skin. Higher levels of relative humidity can also increase pollen and outdoor molds, leading to that additional allergen load. And for anyone that has spring fever, hay fever, just seasonal allergies, they will tell you all the time when their allergies are acting up, their skin is drier because there's an increase there from their immune system just to fighting off everything. So here I have a little diagram for everyone. So just to explain what some of those words were, we see things like tight junctions here in the skin, holding to everything together. Average temperature is negatively associated with the risk of infection and inflammation. So once we're here, like in the summer, especially for states that are down on the Gulf Coast and in the South, you're going to see a massive increase in heat. An increase in wind speed is associated with risk of infection and inflammation. So you're going to notice that after like April, even early June, storms are done and the weather is a little more calm, it's just terribly hot. You're going to notice that there's not as much being blown in. Valerie, can we get a copy of this slide? I can definitely make sure to have this emailed out to you, Valerie, if you'll put your email down below. And
And
then
Valerie and Brady, not to interrupt you, but I'll let everyone know. So the replay of this entire presentation is going to be emailed to everyone within 24 hours from Zoom. So everyone who registered, even if they're not attending live, because Brady, we had over 500 people register for this. And I don't see all 500 here, but everyone's going to be receiving the replay. So you'll receive that list, Brady, so you can send the slide deck to anyone that would like it.
oh, wonderful. So anyone that needs those slides, like she said, absolutely they'll be there and we'll be able to answer any questions about anything there too. I don't want to go into too much on the interleukin in 4, interleukin 13. But basically, your sympathetic nervous system controls the skin circulation and releases things like vasodilators to increase circulation and protect the skin from damage. Vasodilators, basically, those are things that are going to widen things like your capillaries, your veins. It's increasing the blood flow to the skin. So again, we know that all of these things are happening to the skin, and it sounds really scary once we know, like, oh my gosh, heat, humidity, they're doing so many things to my face. What can I do? And, you know, if your client is inside, we can try to have like a little dehumidifier, run a fan, but there's only so much we can do, and we can't control what the weather is like outside, but we can control how the skin is reacting to everything. So the number one product that we recommend to every single person that is having issues from humidity on their skin is our eruption emulsion. It is phenomenal, especially for anyone that's acneic, because with the increased humidity comes increased fungal growth, and clients really need to be on something like eruption emulsion to counteract the overgrowth of fungi. A lot of people ask me all the time, but Brady, what if my client doesn't have fungal acne? Do they still need this? And my answer is always yes, because fungal acne is not the only type of acne that fungi play a role in. Malassezia yeast actually play a role in all forms of acne being produced. Malassezia yeast are these really awful little fungi that live there on the skin. They actually eat your sebum. And then as a metabolic byproduct, they give off oleic acid. And that oleic acid literally melts through your lipid barrier and melts through your skin cells. So we need to be able to balance the amount of fungi there on the face so that you don't have that increased sensitivity, you don't have those increased breakouts. What you'll find with this is that it balances the microbiome within 15 minutes. It also inhibits quorum sensing. And that is basically, you can think of it as a telecommunications network for fungi and bacteria. Even though they're only single-celled organisms, they are very, very strong-willed. They want to live. And so quorum sensing is how they communicate with each other and they tell people tell them, oh, don't come over here. There's an antibacterial product over here. Oh, there's an antifungal product over here. And so when we get rid of the quorum sensing, we get rid of their ability to communicate with each other.
Brady, I have a quick question about that
Yes.
product. And actually, I think I may have
I was
spoken
like,
too
okay.
soon.
So this is actually a before and after showing. So this is something that is great not only for the face, but this is also great. You can see for fungal infections anywhere on the body. So this is like an immediate before and after just overnight of some athlete's foot there on the skin. It is something I recommend anytime someone has like a little bit of a heat rash. It's phenomenal for that client that's like goes running every day and they're wearing like the tight running pants, like anything spandex, anything lycra that really traps heat and moisture. This is really great sometimes even for your clients after waxing that, just won't listen to you and they're not going to wear something loose fitting and cotton. They want to have like the most gorgeous little yoga pants on or something. This can help prevent some of those fungal infections and prevent things like, your barber's rash, your pseudofolliculitis, things like that.
So is it more for, because I'm thinking a lot of the times in the summer, clients will experience tinea versicolor, right? So it's a
Mhm.
fungal breakout, for lack of a better word, where the pigmentation, like you get these white spots. Do you know if it'll work for that, or is that something kind
It
of
works
unrelated?
really well for that, along with this one, the clean cleanser. I actually have both of my little cousins who are so much more tan than me on it because every day during the summer we're out at the pool and they have little white patches that stand out in stark contrast.
Mhm.
The other thing I have them use is actually this, our clean cleanser. This is from our teen line. So this is an anti-foaming, antifungal, and antimicrobial cleanser that is specifically designed to get rid of biofilms. And biofilms are something that some certain bacteria and fungi give off. And it's like, you can think of it almost as that little Steve Rogers Captain America shield that they hide behind and it protects them from basically everything. It holds things together, it inhibits healing, it inhibits the skin from getting rid of dead skin cells. And so when we're actually able to remove that biofilm, then the active ingredients are going to work so much better. A lot of people tell me that, they've never heard of a biofilm. They ask of things like biofilm. And the best thing to think about that I know every single person has seen is plaque there in the mouth. You know that plaque comes from bacteria, excess bacteria building up, and then they build up that biofilm there to protect themselves. And then once, you have that excess plaque there in the mouth, you can't get rid of it just by brushing. So that's why it's important for people to know you can't get rid of a biofilm just by washing the face with any old regular something. You have to have something that is specifically designed to get rid of biofilms. The same way you have to go to the dentist and you have special cleaning and they use like sonic tools and special chemicals to kill that biofilm from the plaque there in their mouth.
So this is a great duo. I love this. So you would get clients on this, and they could ultimately use this anywhere on the body, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is
Okay.
an amazing body wash too because it foams up. And even though it's for our teen line, this is something that anyone can use. Someone that is naturally drier, like I am, or someone that is dealing with lots of inflamed acne, or someone that has like a very disrupted skin barrier, they would ideally want to follow up with something like our Ruby Crystal Cleanser because that has all of the omega fatty acids and things like beta glucan from like the oat oil, from the passion fruit seed oil, from ethylene that is going to help restore the skin barrier. But something really nice about this is that it will totally take off makeup. It's going to cut through oil. It's going to cut through pollution. When I'm in the treatment room, I actually even love this as a lash cleanser because it kills off mites. The first time down in the office in Australia that Jacene had ever seen Dermadex mites, there on the skin and lash mites that were visible because we know they exist on rosacea, but you don't see them day to day, was there on a buildup on the lash line of a lash extension client. And then this just melted everything right away.
Oh, I love that product.
It's so wonderful and it's really affordable. I just want to reemphasize for everyone though that this is generally going to be something that's a supplemental cleanser for most people. Most people are not teenagers because either you're younger or you grow out of being a teenager. And then especially if you're in a drier climate or you're naturally dry, this is like something that you would use and then follow up with something to nourish the skin more. Any insight to the ingredients? I have a client has to be very careful as the products that break down in formaldehyde cause allergic reactions. Do you know this is the byproduct of? No, Lori, nothing that we use breaks down into formaldehyde. We don't have anything that's like a phthalate releaser either. Every single product that we make is for the most sensitive of sensitive skins. And we do all of our testing on people. Like I will be one of the people that's trying it out. Jacine will be one of the people that's trying it out. Her children, her husband. Like we do everything on actual human skin so that we know the actual reactions. We don't just take a study at face value. Oh, it was done in a petri dish. Well, that doesn't mean anything to us. We need to know what it's like in real conditions on real super sensitive skin. And I can send any of the products that you have questions on too. We send out like the full ingredient decks on every single thing too.
And Sue just said, I should have gotten the clean cleanser in Vegas. You should have, Sue.
You should have. I didn't bring it. It's not your fault, Sue. I didn't bring it because I was telling Jenny, I hate having to ship so much because it just gives me anxiety. So I only brought some of the best of the best. And this is something that I definitely would not use in Vegas without a second cleanser to bring, along with it. And that's why I brought our Ruby Crystal cleanser with us.
Are you going to go into that today?
I am I don't have a slide for it, but I can at the end because
You
it really is
guys,
probably my favorite product.
it's hands down one of the most luxurious products. We actually did another article where we highlighted a Rococo esthetician, and that was her
Mhm.
number one selling product. It's like what launched her into the brand. So I'll drop that link in the
Oh,
chat
it's
as
so
well.
good. This client right here actually loved Ruby Crystal Cleanser, but it wasn't until she added in the clean cleanser that she was able to treat all of this up here. And you can see this up here is not true acne. This is actually a form of fungal folliculitis, which oftentimes gets called fungal acne. It's from an overgrowth of that Malassezia yeast. So, Jen, that's actually a really neat question, and I'll go into that there at the end. But we actually don't believe in main active ingredients because we know that the formulation of a product, everything is going to be greater than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense. It's like when you're baking a cake, you could throw flour and sugar and yeast and egg and everything else into a bowl and mix it up, but it's never going to be the same. Once you actually bake it and you make everything, it's so much better than just all of those ingredients individually. But the reason why this client right here she's couldn't get clear without really removing those biofilms was because she lives in a ridiculously humid environment. This is actually a client that lives in, I believe she is in Vietnam. I cannot remember right off the top of my head now for the life of me, but she actually had an overgrowth of that Malassezia yeast there in her skin, and the biofilms were inhibiting the healing. So with that increased humidity, you'll find a lot of the time, even if you're doing everything right, your active ingredients aren't able to work the way you want them to because those biofilms are preventing the healing and preventing the ingredients from really getting down in there and cleaning the skin. So this is one of our products that is actually one of our OG products. This was actually designed specifically for Jacine's son. Our CPR cream or Calm Protect and Revive is actually designed to be a topical alternative to corticosteroids in atopic skins. So skins like eczema, skins like that have psoriasis, skins that have lots of different forms of dermatitis. Like we said earlier, increased humidity breaks down the skin barrier. So this actually has sugars in it that bind to the keratin in the skin to provide a sustained release in moisture. It also increases ceramide production and filaggrin in the skin. So it's something that's going to literally repair the barrier. And this is something that it is made ideally for the body, but you can patch test it behind the client's ear and see if it's going to be okay for them on the skin and on the face. The face is just so much more sensitive that when the barrier is extremely compromised, you can have a little bit of stinging when this goes on at first. That's totally normal. It doesn't mean it's irritating the skin. It's just why it is a body product. But this is something that we even used on Jacene's grandbaby when she was just 3 days old because she inherited her eczema just like her mom and just like her grandma Jacene, and it totally cleared it up within 3 days. And CPR is something that your clients can be on long term, unlike a corticosteroid, because it won't thin the skin out. So you can see this is a before and after of using the CPR cream. It really does calm down eczema, calms down psoriasis, forms of dermatitis. I even use this on my father who has chronic hives because it really calms down the skin and it does, again, act like that steroid without being a steroid. Now, this is something that your client is going to want to be on long term because once it calms it down and they are using that CPR, it doesn't matter how horribly hot and humid it's getting, they're not going to have those breakouts and those eruptions of things like their psoriasis. And then this right here is the one Jenny was talking about earlier. This is the one I was talking about that we won the Ally Award for Innovation in Cosmetic Chemistry. This is our overnight recovery mask. This is absolutely liquid gold in a bottle. I have never tried anything else in my entire life that acts like this. When you put it on, it will actually immediately calm and soothe things like stinging, burning sensations, irritation. And the reason is because it actually acts on things called TRPV channels in the skin. These are transient receptor potential vanilloid receptors. And essentially, the main thing that these do is they react to excess heat and excess cold in the environment. And unfortunately, it can cause things like inflammation. It can cause a breakdown in the barrier. And so when we use a product on there that binds to those receptors and prevents them from acting up with the heat or the cold, we're actually able to instantly soothe the skin. So in addition to calming down the skin, soothing the skin, it is going to rapidly repair the barrier. This is something you can put on at night. Your skin is angry at you. It's red. You've done, whoever knows what. For me, this was when we were in Vegas and I was walking through Caesars and everyone was smoking and my skin was just like burning from walking through the cigarette smoke. I would get back to the hotel. I would slap a layer of this on. And then in the morning, you would never know that my skin had been red and swollen.
You wake up with this amazing dewy finish, which I thought was impossible in a dry climate. I used this product. I've used it here at home on the East Coast where there's plenty of humidity in the air. But when I really fell in love with it, when it was when I was in Denver and I had had a microneedling procedure done, just topical. It was like a point 0.6. It was nothing super aggressive. But I was pretty red, and a day later, you can kind of get a little scaly.
Mhm.
I popped it on that night, and just like Brady's saying, I woke up and it's as if nothing had ever happened. It was remarkable. It completely like changed my perspective on that. And the fact that I could wake up with dewy skin in Denver was it was a game changer.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. The reason why we call it overnight recovery mask is twofold. It actually will reset the circadian rhythm in the skin, allowing the skin to start going through its healing process. But it forms a protective barrier over the skin. So if your client isn't wearing makeup during the day, they can potentially use a thin layer of this, as their moisturizer. But
Mhm.
we generally don't recommend it because if they're wearing sunscreen, if they're wearing makeup, it can tend to ball up on that little film it forms.
Right.
But
So
overnight, you can put on a thick layer and it's just going to sink in
it
overnight.
sinks right in. Like I thought it was just going to sit there. So Brady, would this be your recommendation for sunburns, or would you go towards something else?
Mm, I would probably put this on a sunburn.
Okay.
I usually actually use, if it's on the body, I usually use the CPR cream,
Okay.
um, just because, things will tend to rub off. But on the face, I would say I would usually go towards this, but I never have to because I'm really good about always wearing my sunscreen and then making sure everyone does too. But this would be absolutely perfect for a sunburn because it will help heal the skin. And even though it forms that protective barrier, it is not something that's occlusive, so it
Okay.
won't trap heat in.
Okay.
And it will allow the skin barrier to actually heal. It's not something that tricks the skin into thinking its barrier is already totally healed.
Okay. Great.
We also love this for anything like a fungal infection, anything like excess, acne breakouts, because it also repairs the microbiome. So it does have prebiotics and postbiotics in it to help rebalance the skin. And this is pretty much generally my go-to. I think the this would probably be my second favorite product in the entire line, only behind the Ruby Crystal Cleanser that Jenny had mentioned, because it is my absolute favorite of all time product, just like our esthetician Laura that we featured in lip gloss and aftershave. This one, if I had to, it could be my daytime moisturizer. It would be the only thing that I would use at night after cleansing. Of course, I want to use my full routine, but this right here it's seriously irreplaceable. So I want to go next and show you. This is a before and after of our founder, Jacine. She actually developed seborrheic dermatitis back during COVID because the wearing of the masks, it increases the humidity right where you have your mask on. And like we were saying, humidity can lead to an increase in fungal growth. So this is a before and after of using that, of it rebalancing the microbiome. So rebalancing the amount of fungi that are there on the face and the amount of healthy bacteria that are there on the face. And you can see how it took down not only the redness, but all the rest of the inflammation too. It's not swollen anymore. The skin is brighter, it's more luminous, it's even in tone. And you can see how like healthy and moisturized it is. A lot of the time I feel like when we see inflammation go down, we look a little dull afterwards because the skin has been stretched out, we've damaged everything. But here you can see that the skin has just totally and completely healed, and it's actually even more moisturized and plumper than it was when it was inflamed. So you can, so here I have from one of our markets that we're in is New Zealand. Auckland is there down in New Zealand, and you can see the relative humidity is always above that suggested range of 40 to 60%. So if you are in a climate that the humidity is always super, super high, like if you're up in, say, Seattle, if you're somewhere like down here on the Gulf Coast, I included this because you need to know it's not just during the summer that you might have that increased humidity. Here I have some of the most humid cities in the US. So you can see it's almost like a little line along the Gulf Coast, down in Florida, up in, you know, Washington State, down in Alaska, but really even in Oregon too. I know some a bit up the East Coast. It is so incredibly humid. And it can go even up to 100% humidity, I know, in some of these areas. So this is something you need to take into consideration when you're treating your client's skin. Oh, do I need to be doing something that is balancing the microbiome? Is that something that's inhibiting healing? Oh, I feel like I'm doing everything right for, treating their acne, but everything's not popping up. Maybe it's an excess growth of fungi in the skin. Maybe it's that the skin barrier is breaking down because of that excess humidity. Or maybe here in Australia, I have the relative climate zones for temperature and humidity. Up in the northern part, it's going to generally be very hot, very humid, but it can actually get really cold and dry down on the southern part. So if you have a lack of humidity, if we're below that 40%, it's something that I wanted people to just kind of keep in mind too. They say when you hear hooves, look for horses first. So don't think just because, oh my gosh, I haven't been able to fix my client's skin issues and suddenly this makes so much sense and you're in, one of the driest parts of the country. It doesn't mean you have to start treating your client as if their skin is super, super humid. So with that, that's all of my slides that I have. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I don't know if
The
there were more questions. I don't want to melt the brain too much because that's something we get in a lot of our classes. What was the length of use on overnight recovery mask on those before and afters? So Shannon, that was actually after just one use. That was with a full routine, but overnight recovery mask was the product that made the huge difference there. The way we actually decide to put new products out is either one of us that works for the brand comes up with an issue that none of our products can fix, or one of our clinics reaches out and they're like, hey, I have this client, they're doing literally everything right. I have them like on a food journal, and I know what they're doing on makeup. I know what they're using for their hair. They're using only these products. I know what supplements they're on, and everything's still not working. Well, then we're either going to reformulate one of our products or we're going to make something totally new because there's nothing that we can't treat. Um, at least that's our philosophy. And so again, if we don't have a product that can treat it, well, we'll make one for you.
I love that. I love that about a brand like this. Denisha asked in the questions, Brady, to order as a professional, do we use the stockist function on the US website? And what is the minimum?
Yes, so you will actually go to rococo.com, you'll click on stockists and it'll say become a stockist. And there's just a little, it says, I believe we're calling it the wholesale inquiry form still. And you'll just fill it out. It has like things like for your first name, your last name, where you heard about it, what skin conditions you're wanting to treat. And it just lets us know a little bit more about you. And then we'll reach out to you via email and phone. We actually have no minimums and no opening order requirement. We used to. And the only reason we had an opening order requirement is because people would try, one thing and they were thinking it was going to treat their skin condition and really it wasn't even the right product for it. And then they would get bad results and be unhappy with it. We've since scrapped that, but either myself or Jacine or one of our sales team will work with you to help you figure out what it is truly from the line you want to try because sometimes it can be a little confusing when you're looking at things first. We want to make sure you're getting great results, but then after that, we have no spend that you have to meet to stay at an account. If you want to order just one of an item, you can. There's no minimum order quantities on it, and there's no minimum dollar amount that you have to spend on your orders too. If you're spending less than $500 on an order, then it is a $15 flat rate FedEx shipping charge from our warehouse there in Pennsylvania. But if you're spending more than 500, does you could even be like up in Alaska or out in Hawaii and it's still, free shipping.
You have a warehouse in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we have a warehouse in Pennsylvania. We make and manufacture everything ourselves there on the Gold Coast down in Queensland. But because we know that it would take quite a long time to, ship all the way to New York from Australia, what we do is we manufacture quite a lot of product and then we ship it to a warehouse in Pennsylvania. And that's where all the US orders are shipped out of. And generally, it's going to take just like 3 to 5 business days to get your order when you order here in the US.
Oh, I never knew that. You guys are literally everywhere. I want to point out something very valuable that anyone who's on this webinar, if you guys didn't know, Jacine put together an entire guide to rosacea and Rococo products that address it. So I'm also going to put that link in the chat. If you guys haven't read that yet, there's several articles. I linked to those in the chat that you can read to learn more and learn more about Laura, who's the esthetician that we mentioned earlier. There's a lot of great insight. And what's great is that it's just a different spin and a different explanation. I mean, Brady did such an amazing job going into detail about the brand itself, but this will also give you guys a few other perspectives. I'm just going to grab that length. I think this is it. Give me 1 second. Yep, Rococo on rosacea. So you guys can grab this link and drop your information in it, and you'll get the instant download delivered to your inbox. And again, you'll get the replay for this webinar delivered to your inbox in 24 hours. And then you'll have the replay available for 7 days. So you can watch Brady over and over and over. And then after that 7 days, this is going to live on the Lip Gloss and Aftershave mobile app. So if you guys, if a couple weeks go by and you're like, wait, what did he say about that? And when should I use that overnight recovery mask? You guys can pop on there and just search Rococo and it'll pop up for you guys.
Yeah, it is a really good app. We really like the lip gloss and aftershave app at the Rococo office.
Thank you. We try to make it easy. Brady, when we started this platform 7 years ago at this point, I was thinking of all of the things that I wish I had as an esthetician. I was licensed when I was 16, which seems like an eternity ago. But I wish I had access to all of these brands, and there's brands I didn't even know that I needed to know. And just to get insight into the brand and see what their education's like and see what other people have to say about their treatments. I wish I had had that, and I wish I had had more exposure in one place. And I know print publications were a thing, and trade shows were, but I was 18 years old, I was in college, I couldn't travel to all of the trade shows. So when we put this platform together, that was our goal, was to bring awareness and education to estheticians that couldn't access it easily or didn't even know that they needed to. So we take a lot of pride in the brands that we work with and the education that we put on this platform, and we thank sponsors like you and Jacene for providing this stellar education, to really keep our bar high on what we provide.
Well, I'm really glad we're able to be a part of it. It really is, that's our same mission. We're here, we want to provide that resource to estheticians. We want everyone to feel empowered. That's why we're constantly trying to provide another way to treat, whether it's scarring, whether it's fungal infections, whether it's rosacea, whether it's eczema. We want to give you an alternative way to treat everything. That way, if you've tried it or it's, contraindicated for your client or it's out of your scope of practice in your state, cool, you have another way to treat it now.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. And I almost in my head now will make Rococo this go-to brand for issues. It's almost like this the skin issue brand, because every time you guys, it's like rosacea and now this whole fungal conversation, the timing couldn't be more perfect, obviously, for summertime. I mean, that's when these tend to arise the most. But you guys do such an amazing job. I mean, we spoke about Jacene being such a wonderful chemist. So I thank you so much for your time, Brady. This was very, very valuable today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having us. Like I think we said earlier, if anyone has a question on how to become a stockist, you can go to rococo.com, you click stockist, and there's a wholesale inquiry form, but y'all can also always email into education@rococo.com. We're always here to help with literally anything. We love when people reach out to us for help, treating skin conditions, because we were that client that had our esthetician like reaching out to everyone they knew to try to help with our skin. Like we know about problematic skin because we are the client that has problematic skin.
Yep, exactly. We love the responsiveness. So I guess if no one has any other questions, I don't see any in the chat or in the Q&A. Brady, you will be receiving the list of everyone who registered for this. So Rococo will be in touch with all of you, whether you're watching live or watching this on the replay. We thank you so very much for being part of the LNA community. And Brady, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'll see you soon.
Bye bye.